Hello, my name is Dr. Dan Wedding, and this is DrWedding VB22-C. VB, controlling an Arduino through an RS-232 cable and an adapter board. Most of the viewers who watched my VB22 video did so in order to communicate with an Arduino, pickaxe, or some other microcontroller. Now that I have covered the VB code, I have included these 7 bonus videos to help you get started working with the COM ports. Please review the video that matches your hardware. These videos will have 4 parts. There will be a diagram of the hardware configuration with a parts list under it, and there will be a brief description of the hardware. There is a copy of the firmware that is used to program the microcontroller, and there will be a brief explanation of the firmware. There is a copy of the Visual Basic code that will be used to open the port and control the circuit. To learn more about the VB code, please watch DrWedding VB22. A working demonstration is shown at the end of the video. A diagram of the circuit is shown below. An external power supply is supplying the voltage for the circuit. It is not being powered by the USB cable. The 4 LEDs are connected to A0 through A3. The keypad is connected to pins D6 through D13, where D6 through D9 are inputs and D10 through D13 are outputs. Communications between the VB program and the Arduino is being done through the USB to RS-232 cable. Because RS-232 voltage levels are above a safe level for the Arduino, an adapter board is needed. This adapter board converts the RS-232 voltage levels to TTL voltage levels. The transmit pin on the adapter board is connected to the receive pin on the Arduino, and the transmit pin on the Arduino is connected to the receive pin on the adapter board, or it should be. The boards that I received were mismarked, and the TXD was labeled RXD, and the RXD was labeled TXD. So you might notice in the demonstration that the RXD pin is connected to the RXD pin, and the TXD pin is connected to the TXD pin. Note, you must have the UART board completely disconnected from the Arduino when programming, and you must have the programming cable unplugged when the adapter board is connected to the Arduino. Only one device can be attached at a time. Some RS-232 cables use CH340 chips. These chips have trouble when connecting to a Windows 11 machine. When using these cables, they get assigned a COM port, but they do not communicate. If your cable is not working, go to the device manager and select the properties of your cable. Then look under the driver tab. If your driver version is greater than 3.5, it may not work. You will need to uninstall the device and the driver as shown in the picture. You will need to find and download the Windows 10 version of the drivers. I found a copy. It was named CH341SER. I unzipped the file, ran the setup file, plugged in the cable, clicked on the install button, and when I got the driver install success window, I closed the windows and folders. I went back to the device manager and rechecked the driver for the cable. It was version 3.5. With this new driver, everything worked perfectly. The Arduino code will receive the data from VB and toggle the selected LEDs. It will also transmit the value on the keypad to VB when a button is pressed. This section of code will create 3 variables. The variable once will act as a boolean to limit the number of times the keypad character is sent to VB. The variable kval will hold the ASCII character printed on the keypad. Lastly, the variable inchar will hold the ASCII character sent from the VB program. The next section of code assigns the pins as inputs or outputs and sets them to their default values. The last line sets up the internal UART of the Arduino. The main loop is doing two jobs. The main loop checks to see if anything was received from VB. If a character was received, the subroutine mail call is called to parse the data. Then, the main scans the keypad to see if a button is being pressed. If a button was pressed, the character is transmitted to the VB program. The subroutine mail call will run the character through an if block that will toggle the selected LED. After the character has been used, it is set back to a blank space. This is what the Arduino program uses for nothing new received. There's probably a library for this, but I like to write my own code. The scan keypad subroutine sets the variable kval to Z. Then, it sets the pin connected to the first column to ground. Then the 4 rows are looked at one at a time. If a row is high, the button is not pressed. If the row is low, the button is pressed and kval is set to the value printed on the button. This process is repeated for the second column, and the third column, and the fourth column. Because the microcontroller runs at 16 MHz, it will run this subroutine multiple times per second. You only want the character to be sent to VB one time per press. This if block will transmit the character once, then ignores the key press until the human lifts their finger off the button. Then the if resets, so it can send the next character. This subroutine is executed every time something happens with the UART. If that event was an incoming character, read it in and store it in the variable inchar. The Visual Basic code used in this demonstration is an updated version of the code found in VB22. Below is the form and the names of the objects used in the VB code. A text version of the code associated with this form is found in the description below. The form and the code were explained in DrWedding VB22. The program in this link has a few minor updates from the version in that video. Some of these updates include: phones that are plugged into the computer will not appear on the combo box. A refresh button has been added, so COM ports can be added to the system while the program is running. If no COM port is found, the connect button is not visible. The if serial port 1 is open if block was moved to the top of the button connect subroutine. This allowed the program to select a new COM port while the program is running. This is useful when connecting to an HC05 Bluetooth module. A do while serial port 1 bytes to read is greater than 0 loop was added to the serial port 1 data received subroutine. This helps speed up and prevent lost characters when using an HC05 Bluetooth module. This demonstration will show you how to connect your Visual Basic project to an Arduino using a serial to RS-232 cable and an adapter board. Please note, this adapter board has an error on the silk screen. The RxD and TXD pins are mislabeled. So if you're using the same board, you may need to connect TXD to TXD and RxD to RxD. First, I'm going to plug in the cable and refresh the list. Visual Basic found this cable on COM port 14, so I'm going to connect to COM port 14. My Visual Basic program can now communicate with my Arduino. I have 4 buttons, each one can control one LED on the board. I also have a keypad. When I press a button, it will send the character printed on the button back to Visual Basic and display it on the text box. I'm also not getting the illegal cross-thread error. Hopefully, this video will give you a good idea of how to set up bidirectional communications using a Visual Basic program, an Arduino, and an RS-232 cable with an adapter. If you find these videos useful, please like and subscribe. It is the only way I can continue to make these videos.